What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today's video, we are back with another episode of Lions Latest, where we go through the latest Detroit Lions news. And today is an exciting day. This is a special day for Lions fans everywhere because this is the beginning. This is basically the beginning of the 2022 NFL season for the Detroit Lions. From now, hopefully until February, we're going to be reacting to what we see, gathering new information, and watching the Detroit Lions. Okay, that starts today with Lions training camp, so let's get it started.
Fired up. It's made a great decision.
Great teammates, coaches, and other people who want to be Super Bowl champions. And we are. We're going to do it this year.
And we're going places, because we want to go places.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions!
Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
Welcome everybody to my video. Glad you guys are here. And we're back with another episode of Lions Latest, man. This is a special one. Now, unfortunately, this was not open to the public. That starts next week, so these are not my notes from practice. I had to gather this from, different websites, different outlets. So let me just point that out first. The plan is that starting next week, when these are open to the public, that I'll be there, gather my information, gather my notes, and then share them with you guys, whether that's via live stream or pre-recorded. I may do some live streams this year. Last year, we didn't really do that. I just kind of went, made a video, and then I went the next day, repeated the same process. But I think this year we may mix in some live streams, just kind of depending on how the scheduling works out this year. But the point is that we're back, and that's all that matters. We're back to football. No longer are we focused on 2021. No, it's 2022 now, even though we may still look at some film and stuff. But the point is, I mean, we turned over a new leaf, as they will. We're ready to get this thing started, start off a brand new year. The offseason still, to me, feels like it absolutely has flown by. That first preseason game is going to hit different, but we're back. We're back to football, and that's the only words I need to be excited. So with that being said, we're going to dive right into this. I have a lot of notes to cover, whether that's through Aaron Glenn or Dan Campbell's presser, which it's football time when Dan Campbell is the presser, or it's just the notes that we've gotten from practice today. So we'll share all of those things in today's video, everything that I have gathered. Today, of course, was a lighter day as they're going to slowly kind of ramp this thing up. There are some rules as well, so it's like a 90-minute practice today. There are no pads yet, all right, so keep that in mind. There's no pads, 90-minute practice. They had like little guardians, they call them, on top of their helmets to absorb some contact, I guess, if they get hit in the head. So that's just like a safety measurement they're taking. But the point is that we're back, and that's all that I need. So let's dive right into this. Let's waste no time, and we'll kind of bounce around a little bit as we go through this training camp update video for Lions Latest. Before we get to the participation list from today's practice at training camp, let's pull it back a little bit to what Dan Campbell told us this morning about his players going through initial weigh-ins and also their conditioning test. He said he was very proud of the guys. It was outstanding. There was only one player that did not pass the conditioning test, and that's a player that just started running a week ago. So he was very proud. Everyone else weighed in correctly. So that's great news to hear. Guys were pretty much locked in. Now, getting into the participation report from today's practice, it's a lot of similar names that we talked about in our last Lions Latest video, where we talked about the active pup list and the NFI list. We kind of dove into that, so if you guys want to go check that out, go for it. But we'll update it again here today. Pup list basically means physically unable to perform. You have a football-related injury, and a lot of similar names here. Unfortunately, we have one new addition to this list, but starting off at the top with the rookie out of Kentucky, Josh Pascal, the defensive lineman. Dan Campbell gave us a little bit of an update on what's going on with Josh Pascal, because the last thing we knew is that it was a lower extremity injury that he was dealing with going back to OTAs, but now Dan Campbell has told us that he is dealing with a version of a sports hernia and that he will miss some time. He's doing well, but he will be out a little bit. Now, I'm not a doctor, okay, but just a quick Google search on, what's kind of going on here with the sports hernia. We don't know. This is probably not something that just popped up today. This is probably something that he's been dealing with, so we're not really sure where he's at in terms of a timetable. You could definitely be ahead of this, but just from a quick Google search, usually this takes about 4 to 6 weeks, to come back from a sports hernia type of injury. And they haven't heard of any sort of surgery that he went through for something like this, but apparently if the pain goes away and you participate again, because this usually shows up in sports. That's why it's called a sports hernia, because it's all the twisting and the explosive movements that your body tries to make. If the pain comes back, you may have to have surgery on that. So we haven't heard anything about him having to have surgery. We also don't know exactly where he's at amongst that timetable. And to Dan Campbell, he's doing pretty well. So that sounds like a good update for Josh Pascal. We'll kind of keep our eye on that, but it may be a little bit before we see Pascal back in pads. Good thing we have some defensive line depth, but I definitely want to see Josh Pascal, man. I I think he's going to be crucial on pass downs. I really do. You move on to Jason Kabinda. He is the new addition to this list, the fullback. From last time we discussed this, Jerry Jacobs, and then Romeo Okwara, of course, who went down early last season. In week 4, he is still on this list. Now, with Romeo Okwara, Dan Campbell told us that with, of course, his Achilles injury that he's recovering from, which initially Todd Walsh tried to give us some, excitement here, like, hey, we've seen a lot of guys come back, and we anticipate that Romeo Okwara is going to be the same guy that, we knew before he had this Achilles injury. But as Dan Campbell said, everyone heals differently at different rates. He's progressing on that trajectory, and he's doing well. So that's the little update that they gave us with Romeo Okwara. Again, it's not a very detailed update on Romeo Okwara, so that's one that we're kind of just waiting to see what happens with. But I know we all hope that he's back soon. In the meantime, it is Charles Harris that's filling in at that same position. So that's why it was so good to bring him back, and he also has a very good skill set to be a pass rushing, weak side defensive end potentially. So I think, that's a good piece to be able to fill in there. Jameson Williams, who they talked a little bit about.
He knows what he can do.
I really feel the excitement from just a little smirk right there from Dan Campbell. I see you. I know we're excited too, because he's like, man, this dude can play. With that being said, though, it does sound like it may be a minute before we get Jameson Williams back. They're trying to make sure that he's strong and he can protect himself, that he's not worried about that injury.
And what he's capable of, but he's just not there yet, and that can be frustrating. But we've got a plan for him. He's working, he's progressing, and so I think it's big. The football is where he really, obviously, man, he's all in. He loves it. He eats it up. He knows what's going on. He's attentive in walkthroughs and meetings, and so I think he's got to start there, and that's the goal. That's the reach. That's where you're going for. But to get there, you're starting down here. So we got a plan, and there'll be some days it'll be rough. That's part of rehab too. It's not always easy, but he'll get there.
Natrez Patrick, the linebacker, continues to be on here. CJ Moore, the safety, but he was on the Detroit Lions little skit that they did of Repeat After Me. So I don't know when they recorded that. I'm just hoping that's a reason to be a little bit optimistic. Remember, the NFI list is a non-football injury-related issue. So for a guy like Jameson Williams, it's because his injury took place back in college. It could be an illness, as you see with Dan Skipper. So that's what that is. It didn't happen within an NFL facility. But as for both of these, similarly, they can be taken off these lists at any time. The concern is if they don't get taken off this list before the start of the regular season, then they can be forced to miss up to 4 weeks before they can be brought back. So that's the concern, but the good thing is that these guys come back at any time. It seems like Jerry Jacobs may be closer, and some of these other guys like Jason Kabinda, we didn't really get much of an update on, and Dan Skipper's dealing with an illness, so I'm sure we'll get him back pretty soon as well. Hopefully he is doing okay. So that's the participation update that we have been given with these players. A lot of carryover, but again, I'm just excited to see guys like Jeff Okudah that are not on this list. And according to Dan Campbell, this is what he said: he's good to go. He said he's committed, he's in a good place right now. We will get him some reps today. If he looks good today, we'll give him some more reps tomorrow. For the most part, there's no restrictions. He's been good. So with that, basically sounds like, hey, because we're going to get to it, but basically he rotated with Will Harris today in practice. So those guys are rotating, splitting reps right now, but if he gets more tomorrow, he's slowly going to become, the top guy, as they have both pointed out, Dan Campbell and Aaron Glenn, that he had a very good training camp last year. Okay, so I'm not crazy. I thought he was outstanding last season. I thought he stood out in training camp, and they said the same thing. Okay, so I feel pretty good. Felt like he was feeling any type of urgency to get back. They said, hey, look, he knows nobody wants him more than he does. He's put in the work. He looks healthy. Now he's just got to go to work and show you what he's got. Quarterbacks report a little bit early. Rookies report a little bit early to training camp. Injured guys can as well. But he said there's no, it's not mandatory. I don't make it mandatory for those guys to come and be involved with the football stuff during that time. And he said Jeff Okudah wanted to be involved. He wanted to learn. So, yeah, I mean, Jeff Okudah, we've talked about it. We understand. Coming out of college, this guy had some stuff that he wanted to prove. And he has that same thing going on right now. That's why I think he posts all those videos, because he's trying to show you, hey, I'm still that guy. Don't sleep on me. Don't forget about me. Just wait. I still got something to prove. So I'm excited for Jeff Okudah coming back. I think it's going to be huge for him. Aaron Glenn said with Jeff Okudah, look, he had a very, very good training camp last offseason. He said this to Adam Schefter of ESPN. They did a nice little podcast, and I got the notes from it. It was good. He said, but we have to get him off the injury bug. That's our job, to make sure that he's not still dealing with this injury bug. I kind of like how it seems like the coaches are trying to take accountability for some of, hey, we got to make sure we get these guys back healthy. Not as if it's just like, it just happened. I mean, we can't do anything about it. They're trying to, in their best way, take accountability and find a way to get him healthy. And they've kind of tried to do that, I think, a little bit with a guy like DeAndre Swift, find a way to get this guy on the field more often. He said, we expect Jeff Okudah to play in 17 games into the playoffs. Let's dive into some of the observations that we were given from today's first day of training camp practice that the media is able to attend. And we'll also throw in some quotes from pressers today that we've gotten as well. But let's start off on the defensive side of the ball, because this is something that a lot of people have been making note of about Aiden Hutchinson getting a lot of reps within the first team defense. We know with the Lions, they always say that, hey, look, as a rookie, you got to start from the bottom and you work your way up, right? So you're going to start at the bottom of the depth chart. And we're seeing that with guys, example, Kirby Joseph at safety. But for a guy like Aiden Hutchinson, he's already mixing in and getting first-team reps with a guy like Julian Okwara, things like that. He's already mixing in and getting first-team reps, which honestly isn't a huge shock. I mean, I thought we were kind of seeing that at OTAs a little bit, not completely, but I mean, look, we know what he's going to be this year. He's going to be a starter coming into the season. So it's really no surprise with that being said. I mean, it'd actually be more surprising if it was the other way around. If it's like, hey, he's not getting starting reps. Like, nah, I'm not shocked. He should be getting starting reps. And at the same time, he's just that good. And we're missing guys like Romeo Okwara. He said they did a little bit of 7-on-7. They did a little bit of 11-on-11 work as well. And apparently that connection early, everybody's saying the quarterbacks look light years ahead of where they were last season. They look much better to where they were last year. Dan Campbell elaborated on that a little bit of where, Jared Goff is specifically based on last year. And he said, look, he's much more comfortable. A lot of that is because, guys like Ben Johnson have done a really good job. They've implemented a lot of things that he did well at LA. We know about Ben Johnson saying that, they sat down, they talked about it, they discussed it, and they try to, work on kind of putting this offense together for this upcoming season. But I thought he made a really good note here. He said, John Morton has helped us a lot. Okay, so if you didn't see that John Morton video, that's why you got to check it out. I put in the last Lions latest, and now look at this. We just spoke this guy into existence. Dan Campbell brings up John Morton from the Las Vegas Raiders, and the works that he's done has helped this offense. And man, he's done that. He's helped a lot of quarterbacks everywhere that he's been. All right, and I'm not talking big-name quarterbacks where it's like, well, they were successful no matter what. I'm not talking that. Definitely go check out that video. Some of the more struggling offenses, he's been able to help the quarterbacks and the passing games. And he brought up John Morton as a guy that has been helpful within this for a guy like Jared Goff.
No, I think I'm always getting better. And at this point in my career, it's winning. That's the only thing that drives me. And winning with this group of guys, there'd be nothing more special. I think that's what we all see it as, such a great opportunity with what happened last year. And I know the guys that have been on this team for longer than that. What's happened around here over the last handful of years, and the opportunity in front of us with what we think we can do is special, and maybe once in a career to turn it around this quickly.
So to me, that's intriguing as well, because I do feel like those are, that's one of the under the radar guys that you got to keep an eye on, because it was kind of like that with Ben Johnson, right? Who talked about Ben Johnson before last year? Not many people, but then all of a sudden, bam, he's in this big role. Now everybody's talking about him. Keep an eye on a guy like John Morton for a similar type of thing heading into this year, that if the offense clicks, especially in the passing game, that he gets some credit and we start to hear his name pop up. I'm calling that now. Maybe that's a bold prediction. His name will start to pop up this season. The connection between Jared Goff and Hockenson was notable, that everybody took note that they had multiple nice completions to one another. Hockenson spoke a little bit about Ben Johnson, how when Ben Johnson was a quality control coach here for a few years before he became the tight ends coach and now ultimately the offensive coordinator, how he would sneak in and he would help TJ Hockenson for a few hours, watch film, do things like that. Jared Goff, I think jokingly, I didn't see the presser, said that, he feels like maybe Ben Johnson's got a little bit of bias to get the tight ends involved, but their goal offensively is to find ways to get TJ Hockenson in the ball in a variety of ways, and Hockenson is excited for it because he felt like last year he showed that, hey, I can win on the outside, I can win in different ways, and Ben Johnson is someone that he's excited to work with because he's going to find ways to get the ball in different creative positions and all over the field. TJ Hockenson wins one-on-ones. Simple as that. You find a way to get him the ball if he's one-on-one. And that's just a mismatch. And honestly, I understand the Jameson, the DJ Chark talk, but the fact is, if he gets one-on-ones, which hopefully he can help open those guys up, this is the guy that you're looking to. And I still anticipate he's going to be a gigantic part of this offense when healthy, because he's reliable, picks up big first downs, really didn't drop passes last year, especially on third down. And we just need to pull back some of those penalties. I know I feel like I'm just keep saying the same thing there with TJ Hockenson, but it is a thing that he needs to pull back on some of those penalties, as well as a lot of other players. Now onto the offensive line with some depth chart updates. The starting offensive line, same as usual. With that being said, though, Jonah Jackson, towards the end of practice, reportedly moved to center in place of Frank Ragnow, and they put Kevin Jarvis at left guard for a few reps. Now I would assume this is because we saw it last year at the end of the year. Jonah Jackson, a little bit of cross training. We saw him plug in when we went through centers. I mean, last week we had Evan Brown and he got hurt, and then Ryan McCollum was out there, and Ryan McCollum was really struggling against Green Bay, so they ended up taking Jonah Jackson and pushing him to center. And at that point, actually, it was a little bit better, but we were really getting killed before that change happened. I mean, you could just see it in that game how much it diminished our offense. We went from being kind of attacking to all of a sudden when those guys started to go down, you're like, oh, this is not going to be good against Green Bay. But they pushed Jonah Jackson to center, and he showed some ability there, so I'd assume this is just some cross-training. But it is interesting, Kevin Jarvis getting some reps at left guard, but it doesn't sound like he was getting reps with the second team. So I would assume that he was just kind of trying to get his reps where he could get his reps, and that's where he was getting them is towards the end of the practice. That's what it sounds like. I don't want to say for sure, but that's what it sounds like for Jarvis, and they are working him at guard, even though he played guard and tackle back at Michigan State. However, with the second unit offensive line, what we are told is that it consisted of Obinna Eze at left tackle, which because Dan Skipper is now on the NFI list, he's out a little bit because of illness. We'll see how that updates when he comes back. I'm assuming he'll go back on top. Unless Obinna Eze really shines, then he might work his way back up to that role. But he's getting reps at left tackle, which I'll start by saying I would love that, because if Obinna Eze can play backup left tackle and they feel very confident that he can hold that down, which he's done in the past at TCU, that would be huge for the Lions, because last year we had to move Penei Sewell to left tackle, which I'm not saying he didn't have good games. I mean, he had to do it week 1, but, you know, it wasn't perfect there. I would like to be able to just kind of stick him into a spot and allow him to play that. The flexibility is outstanding, and you need it, but I would like to be able to just have him be a right tackle and improve and really lock that in. So if you have a backup guy that can play left tackle, that's why everybody's looking for the backup swing tackle that can play both. It allows these guys to stay in their position without having to move around starters. Hopefully, you know, Obinna Eze can kind of show that he can hold that down this offseason. That way we can have a backup left tackle that we feel pretty good about. Tommy Kramer played at left guard, excuse me. He played at both guard positions last year, so okay. Evan Brown's at backup center, makes a ton of sense. Stenberg, they had him at right guard, which is a little bit of switch from coming into last year. It was actually flipped. However, we saw again last year Tommy Kramer played left guard, so they may just like him better at left guard. And then they had Matt Nelson at right tackle. Okay, so that's what the second string offensive line looked like. Gotta throw this clip in there. This catch by Quintez Cephus. Cephus has always been tough at the catch point. Here's the 5-step drop, put it up on Amani. I love how he's able to catch and run. This is just nasty, but he's always tough with that little extension. It's now at the receiver position. It was the three guys that you would expect. The top three receivers were DJ Chark, Amon-Ra St. Brown in the slot, and Josh Reynolds on the outside. Those were the top three because Jamison Williams is not healthy. We'll see how that changes when he's back. With that being said, though, it makes a ton of sense. I feel very good about that. Just that lineup feels very exciting to me because now it's like, okay, we got this speedster, big guy, and DJ Chark. Definitely can take the top off. Josh Reynolds, who just wins on the outside, you know, may not be as big of a deep threat where you're constantly sliding safeties. Teams didn't really do that to him, but on one-on-one on the outside, he usually can win that battle, especially on some of those outbreaking routes. And St. Brown, he was drafted to be a slot. He's pretty dominant from the slot. When you flip it to the defensive side, I'm very curious to see this when I'm able to go to training camp, just to see what the depth chart looks like by that time, because right now I think you're just trying to figure out everything. You're kind of plugging guys into places, trying to see where they're best at. It's very early. You're also mixing in cross-training, even if you have a spot for these guys. But defensively, the front seven is so intriguing, and I know the storyline is the secondary, which we'll get to, but the front seven is so cool to me. I love looking at how the front seven shakes out. So apparently the top two interior defensive linemen were held down by Lee McNeil and Michael Brockers. Now I would assume this was in a scenario where you're going with a four-man defensive front. When they would throw out in the third defensive lineman, Levi would plug in. He'd bump out Michael Brockers a little bit. So now I'm thinking, okay, that makes sense. You're probably pushing Levi into over a guard, playing more in that 3-tech role, which is what they're looking for. Aleem's still your nose. Michael Brocker kicks out a little bit. Then they got to individual positional drills, and Aiden Hutchinson was working with some of the interior defensive linemen, the John Kaminsky's, the Eric Banks. Meanwhile, the guys that were working, the edge rushers that were working together, the hybrids, the edge/outside linebackers, Sam linebackers specifically, Charles Harris, Julian Okwara, Austin Bryant, James Houston, Anthony Pittman was getting work there. That's a new little wrinkle that we maybe didn't talk about very much, is Pittman potentially trying to find a spot, and that could be a position to potentially shine a little bit. Now, Charles Harris is going to be, to me, a pure defensive end until Romeo Okwara is back. But with that said, I always do wonder a little bit if there's some flexibility that they believe is there for him to possibly play Sam backer when Romeo Okwara gets healthy, because I get it as of now, your Sam is Julian Okwara. He's your defensive end, your pass rushing defensive end. But when Romeo comes back and is healthy, could you feel comfortable putting Charles Harris there? I would think his skill set would tell you I'd feel pretty comfortable with it. He can drop into coverage, even though I think Julian's a more fluid athlete dropping back. I would feel pretty comfortable with that, but you may have to take a little bit more off his plate in terms of coverage situations. Julian looked pretty darn comfortable dropping into flats, some of those underneath zone working areas. So that's just another thing that I'm keeping an eye on. Now with that, the positional drills, I'm not super shocked because that's something that Aaron Glenn liked about Hutchinson, is the ability to play on the inside. And if you really watch any of Hutchinson film from 2020, 2019, before 2021, he was more of an interior defensive lineman. And from there, he was really, really good. Now, he changed his body. He moved to 2021, played as a pure stand-up edge rusher in a 2-4-5 defense. So he, of course, has the flexibility to do both. But to me, Aiden Hutchinson, this is why I always kind of plug him in as a strong side defensive end, his ability to stop the run. So I can understand the cross work here, and this may be some run defense type of work that he's doing, just because you want to have him all over the place. And they like his athleticism, they like his flexibility. So I'm sure he'll move everywhere because great players can do that. It sounds like when they went to sub-package downs, this sounds like sub-package to me, because they were saying that Charles Harris was starting at defensive end, as I said, but the opposite side, they had Julian Okwara and Aiden Hutchinson rotating for the first team reps. But I'm not completely sure. I wasn't there, so I'll keep an eye on that. Now, at the linebacker position, it was Alex Antoloni as a starter, mixing. And this, guys, keep in mind, these things are going to change, especially when you think about young guys, okay? We may not hear a ton about the young guys and the rookies and how big their roles are. This will change. It will update because of the fact that that's how the Lions do it. Most part, they start you at the bottom of the depth chart, especially if you're a day 3 pick, but they start you at the bottom of the depth chart, and you'll have to work your way up above other guys. That's how they said that they follow it. Aiden Hutchinson, kind of an outlier, but that's kind of how it works. Alex Antoloni is a starter alongside Derek Barnes or Chris Board. Those two kind of rotated in with the first team. Of course, that's 2 off-ball linebackers, 1 Sam backer, and a sub-package that's that's probably an extra defensive back, 2 off-ball linebackers, 4 down defensive linemen. That's what the Saints do. It would make a ton of sense that the Lions would do something like that. So, when you think about that, you move on to the second team group, it was either then Derek Barnes or Chris Board would take the reps there, and they'd also pair them with either Jared Davis or Shondian Hamilton. That's the notes that we're getting, is that one of those two would pair with one of those two guys. That would be a very interesting combination to me, to have both Jared Davis and Derek Barnes on the field at the same time. I can see the Chris Board one. Jared Davis and Derek Barnes would be a very interesting combination. I'm not sure if I love that, but, I mean, hey, you could do it. It sounds definitely more like an early down combination that I'd want to have rather than having a sub-package down combination. With that said, though, I like Jared Davis, I think, more at off-ball backer. I know everybody talks about him being a Sam. I like him at off-ball. So, flexibility to do both. He understands both. I like him more at off-ball. We'll see how it plays out because I think it fits his skill set. With that being said, though, talking about Sam Backer, it sounds like Julian Okwara is the top guy. Romeo's out, so that makes sense, and I could see him be the top guy regardless. They may say, hey, look, Romeo comes back, you're a backup defensive end now, Charles, and you play on sub downs. Makes tons of sense. They could do it, okay? I wouldn't be opposed to that, and I like having Julian Okwara on the field, especially with Romeo and Okwara on the field at the same time, especially if they're, across from each other. That'd be cool. But Julian, James Houston, Anthony Pittman now is apparently getting some work at Sam, and I think that's trying to find a way to get in, right? Trying to find a way to compete, trying to find a way to make the roster. Is sometimes you got to do that because off-ball is crowded. Malcolm in there. Jared Davis is getting work. Shondian Hamilton, right? Alex Antoloni, Chris Board. It's a very crowded room. So I can understand if there's any sort of new opportunity out there to play Sam, that the Lions say, hey, maybe there's something here with Anthony Pittman. And they like Anthony Pittman, right? They do. They seem to. Jared Davis was listed here again. Now on to the secondary. This has been getting all the talk. Not really a shock to me. If you guys watched our cornerback video, first off, I feel terrible because I'm pretty sure I left Savion Smith out of that video, which I really feel bad about. But secondly, to me, this isn't a shock. The Detroit Lions have listed on their team list, and again, this can still be flexible to change, Will Harris as a cornerback and Iffy Melifonwu as a safety. Now, I do still think there'll be flexibility within Iffy, but for Will Harris, I think he's a cornerback. And I've said that since I've watched the guy's film. To me, he's a cornerback, and I just think it's tough to kind of keep bouncing him back between the positions. It's not like we would say he excelled at safety to the point where it's like, well, we got to keep him at safety. It wasn't that. You also brought in Deshaun Elliott, and you drafted Kirby Joseph. So to me, it just makes tons of sense that you would just say, hey, look, you're a cornerback, and if you're going to make the team on the final year of your contract, you're going to make it at cornerback because you saw growth throughout the season. I think athletically, he has the ability to do it. He didn't look the most comfortable. He didn't look very fluid, the most fluid. We did this whole cornerback video, so go check that out. But I think it it makes tons of sense. To me, he's a cornerback. He can jam off the line. He is one of the smarter, more heads-up cornerbacks you will find on this team, if not the smartest, in terms of reacting to things on the fly, communicating with teammates, especially with the young guys. Very good at that last year, calling out plays. Cornerback position, it was Will Harris mixing with Jeff Okudah and Amani across on the other side, and the slot was A.J. Parker. So with that being said, like Dan Campbell said, Jeff Okudah, if he's healthy, he'll play more, get more reps. To me, it means ultimately Jeff Okudah is going to be the starter, no surprise. Amani is going to be the starter on the opposite side, and your slot starter as of now is A.J. Parker, but behind him getting reps is Mike Hughes, which I'm very glad, because he practiced outside too, he practiced both, is that the Lions are going to get reps of him at slot. I really would be intrigued to see what the Lions think of him playing slot, and this is why we need this guy healthy. That way they can actually get a taste. They may not want to put him over AJ. AJ's very instinctual, but I think Mike Hughes has a higher ceiling in terms of man coverage. Mike Hughes can also play outside either. And as the third string, they listed Chase Lucas at slot. He did both in college with Arizona State. He has the foot quickness to play slot, and he has the willingness to hit. He jumps on the first break very heavily. So, complex routes give him problems, but the first break routes and underneath, there's a lot of quick hitters. He can excel there. So, a guy that's willing to tackle, not a huge shock that he would be able to give you some flexibility. I think the Lions want more flexibility there, because last year when AJ went down, what did they do? They put Will Harris. And Will Harris played slot, but I didn't think he excelled at slot. I thought he was better on the outside, actually. So I don't think that's what they want to do. But if anybody can play both, that's great. Also, keep in mind, Jerry Jacobs being on the PUP list is not listed anywhere. Because to me, if Jerry Jacobs was healthy, I wouldn't be shocked if Jerry was, the one at cornerback, and they were mixing Jeff Okudah in with him, or however they were looking to do it. Plus, at the same time, I want Jerry to get back soon, because if Jerry can get back soon, the sooner he does, the sooner the Lions could potentially experiment with him playing slot if they're not satisfied with A.J. Parker or Mike Hughes and what the little bit they get to see from that. I think Jerry Jacobs needs reps there, because I think guys like that are talented like that need to find a way to hit the field. And that's why I think the Iffy one makes so much sense to me, because if you watch his film, he's great off coverage. He has very good body control for a guy at his size. They love the potential of him to match up with tight ends. But of course, as they say, safeties usually match up with tight ends. You have to practice at safety to understand, as they say, the run assignments, where to go in coverage, the coverage assignments, seeing the field from a different element. He only played one snap at safety that I saw last year, and that was against the Vikings. One snap, and it looked like a cover 2 defense. That was it. Did nothing else at safety. So you have to see it from that perspective as well. And to me, if his skill set, based on the film I saw last year, where he struggled a little bit in press, yet he still has the outstanding body control, the great balance, long arms. He's not as, to me, nuanced as a press corner, but at the same time, he has the fluidity and body control and off-coverage athleticism to play safety. It just makes sense to me. And this is why I could end up, I wouldn't be shocked to see the Lions in their final 53-man roster, when we look at it, that you're like, oh, that's strange. Lions don't look like they have a lot of safeties. Well, now they're lifting Iffy as safety, so now it's not going to look strange anymore, because you're going to see Elliott, you're going to see T-Walk, you're going to see Kirby Joseph, and you're going to see Iffy Melifonwu. Now it won't look strange. Now the cornerback position will look lighter, so it just kind of balances itself out. When we make 53-man rosters, we always list Iffy as a cornerback, so it's like, that looks kind of weird, but we also understand that he may play some safety. For the safety position, T-Walk and Elliott were the starters. Backing them up were Iffy and Juju Hughes, so he sounds like he was getting some good reps here, and then the third string was Kirby Joseph. Again, CJ Moore dealing with an injury, so I would assume that's why they're doing that. They're saying, look, if he had maybe the one snap that he had, maybe he played more, I just didn't see him, but I saw one snap, and they're like, all right, we'll put him above Kirby, just because he's been here, and we will take Juju Hughes and we'll put him up there as well because he's played, and Kirby's at the bottom because he's a rookie. But it sounds like they want to run some 3 safety sets, and that's where Iffy becomes very enticing, as well as Kirby Joseph, because, man, that dude can pretty much do a lot of things. So you got to find a way to get good players on the field. I don't want good players off to the sideline just because we have solid guys, and it's like, we have 2 cornerbacks. Like, nah, you got to get creative, and if a guy's skill set allows for you to get creative, find a way to get him involved. To me, I think you got some young guys that are talented, whether that's Iffy, whether it's Jacobs, maybe even Mike Hughes, that you got to find a way to somehow at least try to get them reps. And I get it, there's only limited spots on the field, but you want to test out some of the flexibility that positionally they can bring. And finally, that brings you to special teams, where the Lions were giving Khalif, 4 reps at punt returner. He was the top guy. Behind him was Khalil Pimpleton, who got 4 reps at punt return. And St. Brown got a couple. He did this last year too, I believe. He's just kind of like a security blanket if they ever needed it. You don't want him, I don't think, returning punts. But to me, this will be, I think, Khalif's job, because as Dan Campbell said, that's kind of the role that they originally signed him to be, is, hey, you're a returner, and he can help us a little bit in certain ways offensively. And then at gunner, they worked Bobby Price and Iffy. That makes sense. Okay, I like that combination. And again, if you're going to make the team, you got to at least bring some sort of special teams value if you're not going to start defensively. And Bobby Price can do that. He was good there last year. I would assume Jacobs would also be involved here, but again, he's dealing with an injury. So at Trinity Benson, AJ Parker, I think that's a very interesting gunner group. I would like to see how that works out. Okay, I like that. They're giving them some work there. That's interesting. So again, if Benson's going to make the team, they already know he's going to be near the bottom of the receiver depth chart. You got to find a way to be impactful on special teams, so we need to see that you can be that. I think AJ Parker still falls into that category, and I think they understand that AJ Parker is not a lock to make the team, even though I like AJ Parker and I think he will make the team. Chase Lucas and Jeff Okudah. The Jeff Okudah one's very interesting. I think he's just trying to find any way to get on the field, and he's trying to get healthy. But I guess if he didn't come in as a starter, then yeah, again, you would have to try to show some flexibility here. But I definitely don't think we're going to end up seeing him playing this position. Because again, if Jacobs comes back, Jacobs will just plug in for one of these spots, and Okudah will probably kick out. But he's recovered from an injury, so I'm going to assume that's why he's there now. But I don't think that'll last. Chase Lucas definitely makes a ton of sense. They talked about him bringing special teams value, keeping out guys like Malcolm Rodriguez for the same type of things, James Houston as well. Well, the final notes, Dan Campbell told us this morning that they are looking to, again, be more involved and more diligent, I guess, with critical situations, as he felt like last year, hey, if we're going to be where we want to be this year, he said, look, we have the guys to compete. Now we need to go find a way to close football games. And that pulled him back to the critical side of things. Like, we got the pieces. Now it's on our end to go win football games. We have to be better in critical situations, offensively and defensively.
Feel good about, all right, we got the pieces here to mix it up with just about anybody. Now it's on us to find a way to win.
Specifically defensively, I think there was a lot of occasions last year where in critical situations we didn't show up. But critical goes beyond just fourth quarter final drive, even though it's a big one, because I think communication starts there. Everybody's got to be on the same page. The third strings have to know where they got to be, because you might be there in week 3 like we were last year with Baltimore. You might be there on the depth chart, so you have to understand where I need to be. And a couple of times we just had complete communication breakdowns. The Ravens game was a communication breakdown. That's all it was. When we got beat, we had a communication breakdown on 4th and forever, and it cost us basically a win. If you think about it, it basically did. So there's that. Communication is important. You saw the same thing against the Vikings in week 5. We had communication, confusion. Open passes over the middle, sets up a field goal, they win the football game. They want to improve there. Same thing they want to do offensively. Put some emphasis on the critical situations and be better. But it sounds like the Lions' offense, specifically quarterbacks, are off to a good start, which is great. I said that they are counting on their year 2 guys to take big jumps, because if they don't take jumps, then they're in trouble, because we're not going to go anywhere. If our guys, basically I think the idea here is like, look, if we draft guys and they don't improve from year to year, we're not going anywhere, because you can't build through the draft to not have players develop, just be what they are. That's not how it works. It's not going to work like that. But really, even teams that, maybe are more active through free agency, which I think we will be eventually in trades, you still have to have these guys perform. So with every team, that's basically the case. How do you develop guys?
We got to have it. I mean, if they don't make a jump, we're in trouble. That's the bottom line, because those guys are kind of our core and our foundation. I mean, St. Brown's got to be better. Sewell's got to be better. Levi's got to be better. Mac's got to be better. Barnes has got to be better, because if they're not, we're not going to go anywhere. So, yeah, we're looking forward to it, and we're going to push them to be there.
But there's definitely reason to be optimistic when you saw how the cornerbacks played. As I always say, our cornerbacks were all better last year with a worse pass rush. There's reason to be optimism. And if you just watch week 18 and you see the communication, you see the coverage disguise, and you're seeing these things, and you're like, okay, they're throwing off Aaron Rodgers a little bit. I mean, it's not, they're not shutting him down, but okay, they got him on this play. Look, there's a good one. Look, he didn't know where to go with the football. He got sacked. That's something that's exciting, especially then you start throwing pass rushers, and you're like, okay, now he's going to have to speed this up. Now we have potential to get off the field, and now he doesn't have Devontae Adams, so there's no like, hey, I can just throw it right to you. Anyways, point is, I'm excited. That's it. I know I'm talking a lot, but I'm just excited to get this thing started, man. Dive into what Aaron Glenn said a little bit on that podcast, but basically to keep it simple, he said they want to put the fear back in football. That's our advantage defensively. Everybody's got these offensive rules. The Packers, they have advantages because they have offensive rules. Our only advantage is to put the fear into you, which means we're going to knock the heck out of you defensively. Whether you run the ball, pass the ball, we're going to knock the heck out of you. We're going to play violent. We're not going to get anybody hurt. That's not the goal, but we're going to put the fear back in football. That way when you're watching film, you're like, oh, snap, that team's a problem. I like that, Aaron Glenn. I see you. I see you, Aaron Glenn. Okay? Attack the football, be violent, be disruptive, and put the fear back in the opponent's eye. And one more clip to throw in here, Dan Campbell doing some up downs. Hey, we just carrying over traditions. And now we doing traditions over here. I rock with traditions. Let's start our own. Dan Campbell doing up downs with the team. Also, I think Antoine Randall L's doing some up downs. I can't tell who the coach is to the left. That's just who Dan Campbell is. He's excited to be back just like we are. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.